Every small town in America is home to a local legend. Walland, Tennessee, for example, has Skinned Tom. Point Pleasant, West Virginia gives us the Mothman, and the Florida Everglades offer the Skunk Ape. Each entry into the queue of monsters, ghosts, and madmen has something in common with the rest of them. They offer us a splash of darkness and mystery to balance out an otherwise quite ordinary existence. But for each legend, at least a little bit of truth is usually to be found in the mix. How much truth is hard to say. It depends entirely upon the legend. Take today's story, for example. Can you spot the truth? On the evening of September 12, 1952, just before dark, a group of local boys was playing a friendly game of football in the town of Flatwoods, West Virginia. They had gathered together in the empty yard of the local Flatwoods Elementary School to toss around the pigskin, something they likely did often. It was a friendly but intense game between friends. But just as things were gearing up and the end of the game drew nearer, something that nobody expected happened. Something that caused the football to fall to the ground like a dead fish. There, above their heads, was a fireball in the sky. Every thought of the game vanished from their minds as the boys watched this object race through the sky. Their eyes followed its course with fascinated amazement until they saw it slow down, circle a hillside on the local farmland owned by G. Bailey Fisher, and crash into it. Whatever had fallen, it looked to the boys like a very intense fire. They ran to get a better look, jaws agape. It was very bright, whatever it was, and if it was a fire, then someone needed to be told. They wanted to get a better look, so they stopped at the home of Mrs. May, the mother of two of the boys in the group, and explained the situation, no doubt all speaking at once. When she finally received a clear report of what the boys had witnessed, Mrs. May decided to go with them to see what was going on. She took with her Archie, the family dog, and the boy's cousin by the name of Eugene Lemon, who was a National Guardsman, and followed the boys to the site with a flashlight. As they approached, it was very obvious that this was something none of them had ever seen before. There was a thick bank of smoke ahead of them, and the air had what the group would describe as an oily feel to it. The smell was probably the first thing that hit the group. It was an overpowering, rancid smell, according to the group's account, mixed with rotten egg. Freddie May would later describe it as being almost identical to the smell of a burnt-out tube from older-styled televisions. Their dog started barking at something unseen in the smoke and ran ahead to bravely confront whatever lurked unseen behind it. As they approached, they were able to make out a few things. What lay before them on the hill didn't seem to be a fire at all. Instead, it seemed to simply be a glowing orb of some kind embedded in the hillside. Nobody knew what to make of this, but they knew one thing. This was not a fire. At that moment, the dog ran back out of the smoke at high speed, whimpering, and left the family in the dust as it disappeared towards home. If he's that scared, they thought, there's something living back there, and it's bigger than he is. They looked at each other, each one feeling the tension in the air as they stood there, vulnerable to who knows what lurking behind the smoke. It was at this point that Eugene saw a red pulsing light near to them and shone his flashlight at it. The group then felt goosebumps form all over their bodies and froze unanimously in the fight or flight response. They had seen what the dog had fled from. Before them was a creature with red eyes that towered over them, being between 10 and 12 feet tall. It had green reptilian skin, a head that looked like a spade, and what looked like a metal dress, so to speak, that surrounded its lower body, which was hovering off of the ground. It had spindly arms that dangled beside it, attached to 2 twisted claws on each hand. The reptilian creature hissed loudly and took off gliding towards them. That seemed to break the freeze between fight or flight in the favor of flight, and the group took off running as quickly as they could.
Go, go, go!
The creature making sounds behind them. Nobody dared look back. Eventually, they made it out of the fog and back to the house. Some of them had throat irritation and were sick when once they were out of the fog. Mrs. May had splashes of an oily substance on her clothing. The group didn't ever see the creature again, but it took a long time to recover from the onset of fearing the dark that set in immediately following this. So what did they see? It seems as though people were split after hearing what they had to say. They went to the police after they returned and made a full report of what they had seen. The police took their report and claimed to have gone up to the site to investigate, but they claimed they had found nothing at all, though they were willing to say that the rancid smell still hung in the air. This became something of a lingering joke with the police after the events in question had supposedly occurred. They often made comments that the creature only took a single day to grow from 7 to 17 feet tall. The idea on the other side of the fence seemed to be that hysteria had caused a massive imaginary exaggeration to occur, resulting in the story we know now. But exaggeration of what, exactly? The people discussing this in the skeptics' camp would say that they had seen an owl or a possum maybe, but these people weren't ignorant of owls and possums. Besides this fact, the glowing eyes are the only thing that has been taken into account in this suggestion. What of the height and the hissing, or the gliding? Certainly a possum can make a hissing sound, but an owl? I find that scenario harder to believe than the story we're speaking of. An owl can certainly glide, but where is its hissing and growling? Let alone the fact that this doesn't account for the creature being 10 feet or so tall. The skeptics might account for this by placing the animal in question in a tree, but it seems as though the skeptics think that the people in Flatwoods were not only unfamiliar with wildlife, but also with tree branches. What of the official report from the police that found nothing, but reported the same rancid smell that the group had spoken of? Was a possum watching television in a tree somewhere and one of the tubes went out? Some people have suggested that a kid was playing a prank on them and didn't realize that it would be blown up to such massive proportions over a short period of time. And there are some plausible ideas for how this could have been accomplished with a large elaborate puppet and a small child operating it from within. However, how did this child manage to call a burning object out of the sky, make it circle the hill, and crash into it in a large fireball? Aside from this issue, how did he fill the air with thick smoke and a rancid smell? It doesn't seem likely that this is what happened. On the other side of the coin, the newspaper publisher who spoke to this group shortly after the events said, "Those people were the most scared people I've ever seen." Afterwards, he, being a newsman, loaded up a shotgun and climbed the tree to try to see this for himself. But as the police had noted, there was nothing there but the smell. As noted, some of the members of the group had become sick after these events. Their symptoms do match up to something known and documented: mustard gas exposure. How would this have happened in Flatwoods, West Virginia? After the incident, several members of the group said that they were visited by government agents donning suits and ties. These men asked questions and took statements. All of them matched detail for detail. When these men discovered that Mrs. May had a black, oily substance that had been splashed across her dress from that evening, the men asked to have it examined, and she handed it over. That dress has not been seen for 71 years. The present whereabouts of that dress and the results of the testing are unknown. Many of the witnesses have passed away from cancer in the years after the event. Whether related to this incident or not, we can't say. Everyone who had spoken to any of the 8 witnesses in the years that had passed since 1952 have noted that they are fully convinced by their recounting of said events. They seem genuine. Something seems to have happened that night, that's for sure. What happened? Well, even to the people who witnessed it, that's the mystery. If you like this content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next video.